So it's very hard to discuss Russia or anything having to do with Vladimir Putin in a meaningful way in the United States of America post the Russia Gate scandal or media hoax around Russia colluding with President Trump's 2016 presidential campaign in order to get him elected president. So rather than go over that fiction or even address that fiction, I decided to start this video by talking about a different kind of fiction that's just as imaginary but actually better relates to what we're talking about today. And it's a question that I often get asked in the Discord of this YouTube channel, which by the way is linked in the description. And the question is, what is my favorite political show / which show gets politics right? Now, as I've talked about many times in my Discord with people who ask this question, and I've mentioned maybe casually a couple of times on this YouTube channel, it's definitely not what our favorite lefties to make fun of think it is, which is the show West Wing. If you find it odd that lefties like Kyle Kalinske or Cenk Uygur specifically, when talking about his congressional run, would reference the speeches that he intended to give on the House floor, even though speeches on the House floor have never changed anyone's voting on any major issue ever.
You think that any standard politician, Christie or otherwise, is going to go take on Mitch McConnell like I am? If I was in Congress today, do you know the kind of speech I would have given on the House floor? Exactly like this. Every day you do a press conference, or maybe a speech on the floor of the House. Why don't you say every single day there is one guy responsible for lower wages in America that serves corporate interests and blocks higher wages for the American worker? Mitch McConnell.
It's because these people are obsessed with the hit TV show West Wing, in which the president would battle it out over every major issue and conclude the episode with a dramatic speech that would win people over and thus get the president's priorities put through. There are literal speech montages from West Wing of Martin Sheen giving his dramatic end of episode speech that you can look up on YouTube, and after you listen to a couple of them, it will actually help you dramatically in better understanding the progressive commentators on YouTube and how they view American politics and why it's so idealistic and why it's also so incredibly wrong and incredibly stupid and incredibly immature. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, people ask me about a show like House of Cards. And House of Cards is also wrong. The idea that these are all geniuses at the top that are manipulating everything and blackmailing people in order to get things done is just not accurate either. In reality, the only show that ever got politics right that I am aware of is Game of Thrones, because Game of Thrones understands the one principle that anybody should understand when they're trying to get into politics, and that is no man rules alone. Now, by me saying that, you might be thinking of the very popular video series by CPG Gray, which I definitely will recommend that you watch, or the book, The Dictators Handbook, that those videos are based on, which I also recommend. I recently read it at the end of last year. But the reason I'm going to talk about Game of Thrones as a means to explain what's going on in Russia right now is because it's an incredibly popular series, and it is very clear that George R.R. Martin has an understanding of how power is actually created and maintained in the political process, which is why it is interwoven so well in his stories. And we're going to start with what happens prior to the start of the books, and that's Robert's Rebellion. Now, there is a narrative around a person getting kidnapped and this whole nonsensical thing about how Robert Baratheon becomes the king at the start of the book series and the TV show Game of Thrones. But none of that is really that important. What you actually need to know is that there were 7 key supporters that King Aerys needed to keep on his side in order to maintain power. And one by one, each of these supporters were alienated by Aerys Targaryen and his son Rhaegar Targaryen, and it was only when a majority of those key supporters were alienated that it became apparent that Aerys was going to be overthrown. In fact, in the lore of the series, there's literally a family, the Lannisters, that are waiting to see which way the momentum will turn before they intervene in the war. And it's not just that as an example. Every single example of alienation of a key house or a key to power is expressly told to you as the audience either in the books or in the show. Lyanna Stark being taken by Rhaegar Targaryen is not crucial to the story on its own because she was kidnapped. It's crucial because she was set to marry one Robert Baratheon, one of the key supporters required in order to gain power in that society. When they execute Brendan Stark and his father, this isn't important because they executed 2 people on their own, But it's important because this lost them the North, which is another key to power, and it lost them the Riverlands because Brendan Stark was set to be married to the daughter of the Riverlands. When Aerys orders the execution of Robert Baratheon and Ned Stark, again, this isn't a problem on its own, but it only becomes a problem when that alienates Jon Arryn, who became a father figure to Ned and Robert Baratheon, who doesn't want to go along with that, and then all of a sudden, out of 7 kingdoms, 4 are completely alienated against you. Also, the Lannister family that I referenced earlier, that key to power, that bridge was burnt when the king stole the heir of that house. All of these factors that happened pre-show are what led to King Robert Baratheon actually being a thing at the start of the series. And the fact that Robert Baratheon rewarded those who ended up siding with him is what maintained his power. Now, it's important to note that this fictional rise to power parallels exactly how Vladimir Putin in reality rose to and maintains his power up until today. And you can understand this by observing what's important in Russia and what actually keeps Vladimir Putin in power. Oil is a crucial industry in the nation of Russia. You better believe that the people who get oil contracts in the state of Russia are people who are loyal to or backers of Vladimir Putin. If you're against Putin and you're making a lot of money, then Putin's not doing his job, because what you're doing is becoming a threat. This is one of the reasons why one of the richest people, or actually the richest person in Russia, is actually in jail at this moment, because there was suspicion that this person was getting too powerful and might pose a threat to Vladimir Putin's rule. But another even better example of this is the rise in prevalence of religion in Russia and Vladimir Putin's full embrace of the Russian Orthodox religion in his nation. Now remember, Vladimir Putin was the head of the KGB before he was the president of Russia under the old Soviet Union, and the old Soviet Union strictly outlawed religious activity and suppressed the Russian Orthodox Church. Vladimir Putin, as the head of the KGB, would have definitely participated in that suppression. So how is Vladimir Putin doing a 180 and all of a sudden being perfectly aligned with the church? This is because the suppression of religion under the Soviet Union only greater magnified its importance when the Soviet Union fell. So the heads of the Russian Orthodox Church are actually important power brokers, and even though Vladimir Putin likely spent his career suppressing and arresting religious activity, he now has to embrace them in order to maintain his position. Because if you don't pay homage to the church, if you don't give them a seat at the table, then the church might deem you not the appropriate candidate, and that can lead to problems down the line. The church became key supporters of Vladimir Putin, and even though there's no real ideological reason for he himself to be siding with them, there's a practical political reason for that purpose. Now, I could give you multiple other examples of Vladimir Putin seemingly doing a 180 in order to better strengthen his position, because he is an expert at gaining and maintaining his power. So why, all of a sudden, are there protests in the street against Vladimir Putin? Why, all of a sudden, for the first time ever, has Vladimir Putin actually had to deny accusations of corruption? These accusations have always been there, but he's never really had to deny them because no one would dare ask him about it that was in the Russian press. Why is the opposition leader in Russia being mentioned by name in the press, even though that never happened before? The answer is a weakness that all of us have. Whether you're a peasant, a president, a king, a god emperor, you will eventually die, because all humans die. And Vladimir Putin right now is being weakened because there are rumors that he is unhealthy and thus unfit to continue being president. Now, whether or not Vladimir Putin actually has Parkinson's disease or cancer or some other kind of illness that people are speculating that he has is completely irrelevant. Once it's out there that his health might be in jeopardy, that his death might be impending, it might be coming sooner rather than later, people are already planning for his replacement in order to secure their own position. Remember, last year, Vladimir Putin and Russia passed a law saying that this guy could be president all the way to 2036. So in 2020, they were assured that Vladimir Putin would be the guy all the way into the future because he was perceived to be in good health and he was serving all of the key interests that keep him in power. But all of a sudden, with just rumors that he might not be healthy enough to serve into the future, that he might die, the protests have started, and people are now vying for his position. And we're going to go back to the fictional narrative of Game of Thrones to explain this and the deathbed of Robert Baratheon. So in the first season of Game of Thrones, it is clear and apparent that Robert Baratheon, after a hunting trip, is on the verge of death. Now, Ned Stark, the Hand of the King and Robert Baratheon's closest friend, does not want to put his son on the throne because he has discovered through the course of this first season that his son is actually not his son and thus is not a legitimate heir to the throne. Now, throughout the scenes around Robert Baratheon's death, Ned Stark is offered a number of alternatives in place of crowning Joffrey, Robert Baratheon's illegitimate son, or Jaime Lannister's illegitimate son. However, he refuses them all in favor of Stannis Baratheon. Now, while this is depicted as noble to the audience, it's actually incredibly stupid, because Stannis Baratheon is a threat to all of the pre-existing keys to power that kept the throne going while Robert Baratheon was king, and Ned Stark is telling all these people that he's going to support a guy that's going to undermine all of their positions. The reason that Peter Baelish actually ends up betraying Ned Stark in the throne room is because Peter Baelish knows that Stannis Baratheon wants to remove him from his position and shut down his business. Why would he benefit from Stannis Baratheon getting the throne? The same is true for each and every member of the small council that Ned Stark ends up interacting with. He has a chance to crown Renly Baratheon the rightful king of the throne, and he would actually be given enough swords to have the force required in order to take the throne, but he refuses to do it. The fact that all of the members of the small council, aka the keys to power to maintain a kingdom in Westeros, would have lost ground based on the choice that Ned Stark was siding with, they all, in their own way, side against him and go with their own path. This is why Ned Stark ends up losing that battle in the first season, and Peter Baelish ends up becoming a lord, because the only person who offered him a better offer, a better position, was the Lannister family, and because keys to power aren't supporting the person that they're supporting because they like them, but because they benefit from supporting that person, it was obvious why Ned Stark ended up losing the exchange with the Lannisters when he tried to crown Stannis Baratheon. This is exactly what's happening in Russia. Although Vladimir Putin has done absolutely everything to grab and maintain power, he cannot fight off the Reaper. Rumors of his death are making his key supporters see him as somebody who is in jeopardy, and thus they are planning for his secession to make sure that they can maintain or improve their positions during the next administration. And one of the problems that Vladimir Putin is having is that he doesn't have a clear familial link in order to perpetuate his rule into the future. There's a reason why people have followed family dynasties over the centuries, because you kind of know what you're going to get with a family. It's a way to continue rule to make sure that you and yours get their positions kept, maintained, and improved over time by supporting a single family at the top. Now, just a couple of years ago, it would have been absolutely crazy if anybody told you that Vladimir Putin's rule was going to be coming to an end. However, with rumors of his health and thus panic among his key supporters base to make sure that they're not on the outside looking in at the next administration, these people are already pushing for the next successor to Russia, which means that we might see either the death of or the flight of Vladimir Putin to another country. He's already started, or at least there are rumors that he's already starting to move his family out of the country. If you don't think that he and his money have an exit strategy as well, then you haven't been paying attention very much to how these dictatorships come to an end. Either you escape out the back door, or you end up leaving in a hearse. And Vladimir Putin reportedly is somebody who watches that Muammar Gaddafi execution video every single day inside the Kremlin. Anyway, those are just my thoughts. I'm hopeful that using something related to pop culture made this concept easier to understand and it helped better communicate my points. If it did or it didn't, let me know down in the comments below. If you think Vladimir Putin is on his way out, also let me know whether you agree or disagree with that. But as usual, if you like the video, show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. Follow me on all my social medias. They are linked in the description. Support me via the support links. Get your tickets to Better Discourse 2. Till next time.